In the heart of Galilee, where the Sea of Galilee shimmered like a sapphire under the sun, there lived a farmer named Gideon. His village, Bethsaida, was a humble cluster of mud brick homes perched on a hillside, surrounded by fields that stretched toward the lake's edge. Gideon was a man of 40, broad-shouldered and calloused from years of toil, with eyes that held both the weariness of labor and the spark of hope. His dark beard was flecked with gray, and his hands, rough as the earth he tilled, moved with a quiet reverence when he sowed his fields. Gideon's land was his life. Each spring he walked the furrows, scattering seeds with a rhythm as old as the hills. Wheat, barley, and millet, the promise of bread and sustenance. He knew the soil's secrets, the rocky patches that defied the plow, the thorny corners where weeds thrived, and the fertile plots that yielded golden harvests. To Gideon, sowing was more than work. It was a covenant with the land, a trust that what he planted would grow. Bethsaida was a village of fishermen, farmers, and merchants, its rhythm tied to the seasons and the lake. But times were hard. Roman taxes bit deep, leaving families like Gideon scraping by. His wife, Leah, wove baskets to sell at market, and their 2 children, Miriam and Joel, helped in the fields, their laughter a balm for Gideon's worries. Yet beneath his steady demeanor, Gideon carried a gnawing doubt. Would the harvest be enough? Would the rains come? And deeper still, a question he dared not voice. Was there more to life than this endless cycle of sowing and reaping? One morning, as the sun rose over the lake, Gideon prepared for the day's work. He filled a leather pouch with seeds, their tiny forms heavy with potential, and slung it over his shoulder. Leah packed him bread and dried fish, her smile warm but tinged with concern. "Be careful, Gideon," she said, glancing at the sky. "The winds are restless today." Gideon nodded, kissing her forehead, and set out, his sandals kicking up dust on the path to the fields. The village buzzed with news. A teacher, a man called Jesus of Nazareth, was speaking by the lake. Crowds gathered daily, drawn by his words that stirred hearts, challenged traditions, and spoke of a kingdom greater than Rome's. Gideon had heard whispers of this teacher, of miracles and parables, but he was a practical man. "Words don't fill bellies," he'd say, though a part of him wondered what drew so many to listen. As Gideon reached his field, he saw the crowd in the distance, a sea of faces along the shore. A boat bobbed on the water, and a man stood within, his voice carrying over the waves. Gideon paused, curious, but duty called. He began to sow, his arms sweeping in wide arcs, seeds scattering like stars across the earth. The field was a patchwork, a hard path worn by travelers, a rocky outcrop, a thorny patch, and a stretch of rich soil. Each seed fell where it would, and Gideon trusted the earth to do its work. The first seeds landed on the path, a strip of packed earth where feet and carts had hardened the ground. Gideon knew these seeds had little chance. The soil was unyielding, and birds, sparrows and doves, swooped down, snatching the grains before they could take root. He sighed, scattering more, but his thoughts drifted to the crowd by the lake. Among the listeners was a young man named Silas, a scribe from Capernaum. Silas was sharp-witted, trained in the law, and proud of his learning. He'd come to hear Jesus, not out of faith, but to test him. "Another wandering preacher," Silas muttered, his quill poised to note any heresy. As Jesus spoke of a sower and seeds, Silas listened, but his heart was closed, hardened like the path in Gideon's field. The words fell on him, but he dismissed them, his mind racing with arguments. "Kingdom of God," he scoffed. "Show me proof." Before long, Silas turned away, his sandals crunching on the shore. The words, like seeds on the path, were snatched by his skepticism, leaving no trace. He returned to Capernaum, his scrolls unchanged, his heart untouched. Gideon, unaware of Silas, continued sowing, the birds circling above, their chatter a reminder of seeds lost. Other seeds fell on the rocky outcrop, where a thin layer of soil hid sharp stones. Gideon knew this patch well. Seeds might sprout here, but their roots could never dig deep. The sun would scorch them, and without water they'd wither. He scattered sparingly, hoping a few might survive, and moved on, his pouch lighter but his heart heavy. In the crowd, a woman named Rachel stood, her eyes fixed on Jesus. Rachel was a widow, her life a struggle since her husband's death. She'd lost her home to debts, and her only son, Nathan, worked as a laborer, barely earning enough to feed them. When Rachel heard Jesus speak of a sower, she felt a spark of hope. His words, about a kingdom where the broken were lifted, lit a fire in her. "Could this be true?" she whispered, clutching her shawl. Rachel returned home, her heart alight. She told Nathan of the teacher, her voice bright with possibility. For days she prayed, her faith budding like a seedling. But life pressed hard. Nathan fell ill, unable to work, and creditors pounded at their door. Rachel's hope faltered. "Where is this kingdom?" she cried, her prayers growing faint. The words she'd heard, like seeds on rocky ground, sprouted quickly but withered under hardship, their roots too shallow to endure. Gideon, sowing in his field, glanced at the rocky patch. Tiny green shoots poked through, but he knew they wouldn't last. He moved to the thorny corner, his thoughts on the harvest, unaware of Rachel's struggle. The thorny patch was Gideon's frustration. Weeds, brambles, and thistles choked this corner, their roots greedy for water and light. Seeds here faced a battle, and few survived. Gideon scattered seeds anyway, his arm tireless, but he muttered under his breath, "A waste, but I must try." By the lake, a merchant named Baruch listened to Jesus. Baruch was wealthy, his home filled with fine linens and silver, but his heart was restless. He'd built his fortune through cunning, often at others' expense, and guilt gnawed at him. When Jesus spoke of a sower and a kingdom of righteousness, Baruch felt a tug. Perhaps I could change, he thought, imagining a life of generosity. Baruch left the shore inspired, vowing to help the poor. He gave alms, visited the synagogue, and spoke of the teacher's words. But the world pulled hard. His business demanded long hours, his clients flattered his pride, and wealth whispered of security. The market's clamor, deals, profits, status, choked his resolve. Weeks later, Baruch's faith was a memory, buried under ambition, like seeds smothered by thorns. Gideon, too, felt the thorns pull. Taxes loomed, and a neighbor offered to buy his field for a tempting sum. "Sell, and you'll be free," the man said. Gideon refused, but the thought lingered, a weed in his mind. He sowed on, his seeds falling on the good soil, unaware of Baruch's fading light. In the sun-drenched hills of Judea, where olive groves swayed and the air carried the scent of baked bread, there stood a grand estate on the outskirts of Bethany. Its owner, Lord Matthias, was a man of wealth and wisdom, known across the region for his thriving trade in spices, linens, and rare jewels. Matthias was tall, with silver hair and piercing eyes that seemed to see through to one's soul. His voice, though gentle, carried authority, and his heart was guided by a faith deeper than his riches. Matthias' estate was a hive of activity, servants tending vineyards, scribes tallying accounts, and merchants arriving with caravans of goods. But his true pride was his household, a loyal band of servants who managed his affairs with skill and care. Among them were 3 men, Eli, Samuel, and Jonah, each distinct in temperament, yet bound by their service to Matthias. Eli, the eldest at 35, was a man of ambition and ingenuity. His quick mind and steady hands had doubled the estate's olive yield, and his charm won favor in Jerusalem's markets. Samuel, 28, was quieter, methodical, with a knack for numbers. He oversaw the ledgers, ensuring every coin was accounted for, his cautious nature a balance to Eli's boldness. Jonah, the youngest at 22, was timid, his eyes often downcast. He tended the stables, his work diligent but unremarkable, overshadowed by fear of failure. One autumn evening, as the harvest moon rose, Matthias gathered his servants in the courtyard. The air was cool, the lamps casting golden light on the stone walls. "My friends," Matthias said, his voice steady, "I am called to a distant land, a journey to Damascus to secure new trade routes. I will be gone for many months, perhaps a year. In my absence, I entrust my wealth to you." The servants murmured, surprised. Matthias produced a heavy chest, its lid creaking as he opened it to reveal bags of gold talents, each talent worth 20 years' wages for a laborer. To Eli he gave 5 talents, saying, "Your vision is bold, use these wisely." To Samuel he gave 2 talents, noting, "Your care is steadfast, steward these well." To Jonah he gave 1 talent, his gaze kind but firm. "Your heart is true, do not fear to act." Jonah's hands trembled as he took the single talent, its weight heavy in his palms. 5 talents for Eli, 2 for Samuel, but only 1 for him? Did Matthias doubt his worth? The thought gnawed at him, but he said nothing, bowing with the others as Matthias blessed them. "I trust you to multiply what I've given," Matthias said. "When I return, we will settle accounts." With that, he departed, his caravan vanishing into the dawn. Eli wasted no time. The 5 talents burned in his mind like a fire, a chance to prove his worth and honor Matthias. He sat late into the night, sketching plans by lamplight. The markets of Jerusalem were ripe with opportunity, spices from the east, silks from Tyre, and grain from Egypt. But trade was risky, bandits prowled the roads, and prices fluctuated with the seasons. Eli, undaunted, saw risk as the soil of reward. He hired a caravan, hand-picking trusted guards and merchants. With 3 talents, he bought rare saffron and myrrh, negotiating fiercely with traders from Arabia. The remaining 2 he invested in a fleet of fishing boats on the Sea of Galilee, betting on a bountiful season. Each decision was a gamble, but Eli thrived on the challenge, his confidence a beacon to those he led. Months passed, and Eli's ventures bore fruit. The spices sold for triple their cost, filling the estate's coffers with gold. The fishing boats hauled nets heavy with fish, their catch supplying markets as far as Caesarea. By the year's end, Eli's 5 talents had grown to 10, 5 more than Matthias had entrusted. He stood in the courtyard, counting the gold,